Suddenly, a long-dormant controversy exploded back into the public spotlight as author James Frey, the man once hailed and then humiliated on national television, took aim at none other than Oprah Winfrey in a fiery and unexpected public rebuke. On June 10th, nearly 2 decades after the infamous fallout over his memoir, A Million Little Pieces, Frey resurfaced in the headlines with scathing words for the media icon who once catapulted him to fame, only to dismantle his reputation before a live studio audience. In a rare and pointed statement, Frey accused Oprah of hypocrisy, claiming that her recent revival of the scandal on her platform served only to recycle controversy for ratings, and offered no truth, only trauma dressed up as redemption. The timing of his statement was no coincidence. Oprah had just aired a retrospective segment revisiting some of the most controversial moments in her talk show history, including the 2006 on-air confrontation where she denounced Frey for embellishing and fabricating details in his best-selling memoir. That episode, watched by millions, became a cultural flashpoint that redefined the boundaries of truth in memoir, and forever branded Frey as a literary pariah. But now, in 2025, with cultural norms shifting and public discourse more sensitive to cancel culture and performative morality, Frey's counterpunch struck a nerve. In his remarks, he questioned Oprah's motives, asking why she chose to reopen a 20-year-old wound just as conversations around platform power and media accountability were heating up again. Was it truly about reflection or about ratings? His criticism ignited a firestorm on social media, with some applauding his bravery in confronting a figure as untouchable as Oprah, while others accused him of opportunism and deflection. Still, the impact of his words couldn't be denied. The moment reframed not just his own legacy, but also Oprah's, calling into question how much power legacy media figures still hold, and what responsibility they bear when revisiting past mistakes. For those unfamiliar with the original scandal, Frey's memoir had been marketed as a raw, brutally honest account of his struggles with addiction, earning Oprah's coveted book club endorsement and skyrocketing to literary fame. But when investigative reports revealed that key elements of the book were fabricated or exaggerated, Oprah publicly confronted Frey in what many now call one of the most brutal interviews in daytime television history. That takedown left Frey disgraced, and Oprah praised for journalistic integrity. Yet 2 decades later, the lines between moral authority and media spectacle have blurred, and Frey's accusation that Oprah weaponized her platform for personal absolution and audience engagement landed with unexpected resonance. As the clip from the original confrontation went viral once more, a new generation unfamiliar with the drama began to ask, who really benefited from that moment? And now, as the cameras roll again and reputations are reevaluated, the stage is set for a fresh reckoning, one that may reveal more about the media industry itself than the man who started it all. But beneath the explosive headlines and viral soundbites, a deeper and far more uncomfortable tension began to unravel, one that pitted the power of media empires against the enduring wounds of public humiliation. James Frey's critique didn't just reopen a historical controversy, it reignited a fierce cultural debate over who controls redemption and at what cost. As social media platforms filled with polarized reactions, former fans and critics alike revisited the infamous 2006 broadcast, dissecting Oprah's tone, Frey's posture, and the optics of a powerful black media titan dismantling a white male author on live television. Some praised Oprah's bravery in confronting deception. Others, now armed with a more nuanced lens on power dynamics and media ethics, questioned whether her approach was more spectacle than accountability. Meanwhile, Frey, once lambasted as the poster child for literary fraud, found unexpected sympathy among a younger audience more skeptical of traditional gatekeepers. What she did wasn't journalism, one post read, it was a public shaming. That sentiment echoed across TikTok and X, where users began splicing together clips of Oprah's past confrontations against authors, politicians, and celebrities, and reevaluating them through a 2025 lens. Was Oprah building others up or tearing them down to secure her legacy as an infallible moral authority? Frey's argument that she recycles trauma for content began to gain traction, not just among disillusioned viewers, but even among media watchdogs and ethics professors. One viral podcast episode, titled The Oprah Dilemma, asked whether her brand of emotionally charged media had created a model for exploitative storytelling that prioritized personal catharsis over collective growth. Simultaneously, Frey's defenders resurfaced long-buried essays and interviews where he admitted to embellishments, but maintained that the emotional core of A Million Little Pieces was always authentic. Memoir is memory, not journalism, he had once said. And now, 2 decades later, that distinction had become more relevant than ever. Authors, influencers, and journalists began weighing in, arguing that the nature of truth in storytelling is more fluid than absolute, and that Oprah's re-airing of the scandal lacked the humility to acknowledge her own role in the media machine. Critics pointed out that if her intention was to educate, she could have invited Frey back for a real-time conversation, one that allowed him to speak, not just be spoken to. But that opportunity never came. Instead, the retrospective episode was framed as a solo reflection, with Oprah revisiting clips through her own commentary without reaching out to Frey or including his perspective. That omission, Frey claimed, was the most telling part of all. You can't call something a reckoning if it only includes your version of the past, he said in a follow-up interview, his voice steady but defiant. As his words echoed through news cycles, the media world found itself caught in a complex moral loop. Is it possible that Oprah, long viewed as the conscience of America, might have blind spots in her own narrative of truth and accountability? And if so, who gets to question her legacy without being dismissed as bitter, broken, or opportunistic? These were the uncomfortable questions now hanging in the air as the line between past and present continued to blur. Then, the controversy surged into its most volatile phase as journalists, celebrities, and even former Oprah show producers began weighing in, each adding fuel to a cultural firestorm that refused to die down. A former senior producer, speaking under condition of anonymity, revealed that the original 2006 confrontation with James Frey had been a carefully managed media moment, not a spontaneous reckoning. According to the source, internal discussions took place about how best to preserve Oprah's credibility while distancing the show from the scandal, suggesting that the explosive nature of the segment may have been more strategic than moral. The revelation hit the internet like a thunderclap, validating Frey's accusation that the moment had been less about truth and more about optics. Meanwhile, high-profile authors like Roxane Gay and Elizabeth Gilbert took to social media to comment on the ethics of public shaming disguised as accountability, with Gilbert tweeting, "Redemption should be a conversation, not a monologue." Across the media landscape, think pieces blossomed. Some defended Oprah's role as a cultural gatekeeper, arguing she was simply doing her job at a time when truth in publishing was under attack. Others argued that the entire ordeal had exposed a deeper pattern in media culture, one in which powerful figures curate narratives that protect their legacy at the expense of others. Oprah, for her part, remained largely silent during the initial backlash, fueling even more speculation. It wasn't until a week later that she released a measured statement. "I believed then, and I believe now, that the truth matters. But I also recognize that how we pursue truth matters too. If my past actions cause pain, I accept responsibility." It was a statement that tried to walk the line between justification and apology, but to many, it felt too little, too late. Frey, unfazed, responded in a guest column for The Atlantic, writing, "It's not about revenge, it's about ownership of the past, mine and hers." That essay went viral instantly, praised for its vulnerability and its refusal to let a cultural giant off the hook simply because time had passed. Frey's supporters pointed out the broader implications of the moment, how easily truth becomes content, how apologies often come after brand safety is secured, and how the most powerful people in media are rarely held accountable in the same way they hold others. Adding to the drama, streaming platforms began re-promoting the original Oprah episode, reigniting public interest and raking in millions of views. Critics were quick to call it exploitation of renewed controversy, while fans of Frey accused the media ecosystem of once again profiting from his pain. Even academia joined in, with university panels debating the ethics of Oprah and using the Frey controversy as a case study in modern media manipulation. What had started as a personal outcry had become a full-blown cultural inquisition. Not just of Oprah Winfrey, but of the entire machinery of celebrity redemption, truth-telling, and the currency of public humiliation. And as the world watched with divided loyalties and rising discomfort, the central question only intensified. When truth is a performance, who is the real audience? Ultimately, the storm gave way to something more sobering, a collective pause, a deeper reflection on how stories are told, and who gets to tell them. James Frey, once vilified and discarded by the very institutions that made him, emerged not as a victim seeking revenge, but as a man wrestling with the legacy of public shame. His voice, once drowned out by outrage, was now being considered with cautious empathy. But perhaps the most profound shift occurred outside the spotlight, in the quiet recognition that both Frey and Oprah were reflections of a media system that rewards spectacle, punishes nuance, and monetizes trauma. Readers and viewers alike began rethinking their roles as consumers of controversy. Comment sections became less combative, more curious. Influencers reframed the debate, urging their audiences to consider what accountability actually means when it plays out in front of millions. Because in the end, this wasn't just about a book, a lie, or a takedown. It was about the evolution of cultural power, the fragility of public trust, and the human desire for redemption that no amount of ratings can ever truly manufacture. And as the world moved on, wiser, if not entirely healed, one truth finally echoed louder than any scandal. Stories shape us, but only if we're willing to listen to all sides, even the ones we tried to silence.